Morning, it's Keir here. My director of strategy, who's a right ginger, has said that I should explain our new policy on migration very simply. So before, we loved illegals. We couldn't get enough of illegals. Illegals, come, welcome. I helped bring them in. I put them in hotels. I also love a Rwandan. I love me a stubby Rwandan. In fact, I love all illegals because they are the ones that vote for us.
Breaking tonight, Westminster looks less like the heart of a stable government and more like the opening shot of a political thriller gone off the rails. Smoke drifting over Whitehall. Sirens cutting through the cold air. Thousands outside the gates shouting the same word over and over. Resign. And all of it triggered by one brutal question that ricocheted across the country like a thunderclap. If the Prime Minister lied to the Commons, is that a resignation event? Yes. One word. One spark. And Britain hasn't been the same since. Because the scandal that exploded today didn't come from opposition parties, anonymous sources, or a backbench troublemaker. It came from someone inside the machine. Laura Trott, junior minister turned reluctant whistleblower, caught in the crossfire after a leaked exchange exposed her privately calling the Prime Minister's defense of a close ally absurd. That leak spread across social media in minutes. By lunchtime, it was everywhere. Screens in pubs. Notifications pinging across offices. Bus passengers gasping at headlines. And that single word from her interview, yes, ignited something this government hoped would stay buried. At 4:17 p.m., a 217-page document stamped confidential was dropped anonymously into the inbox of 3 political reporters. It detailed a series of internal communications showing senior officials discussing how to manage public perception, about £2.4 billion in fast-tracked contracts connected to a donor-friendly consultancy group. In the margins of one page, someone had scribbled, PM must stick to one version. No deviations. Within the hour, the document was verified by 2 independent analysts. The phrase stick to one version hit like a bomb. Suddenly, that simple question, did he lie, went from hypothetical to urgent. By early evening, Westminster was surrounded. More than 18,000 people flooded the streets. Some carried handmade banners. Others held up their phones streaming live. A pensioner in a flat cap held a cardboard sign that read, I paid taxes for 52 years. Why can't they tell us the truth? A veteran in a wheelchair looked straight into a camera crew's lens and said, I gave my leg for this country. Now I sleep in my car. Don't tell me this is the best they can do. His voice broke. The crowd applause drowned out the traffic. Applause. Inside Parliament, chaos. Backbenchers shouting over each other. Ministers pacing the corridors with phones glued to their ears. Aides clutching folders like life rafts. Journalists running between committee rooms as if navigating a sinking ship. At 6:03 p.m., police enacted crowd control on Bridge Street as the protest surged. Flares lit the sky in red streaks. Tear gas drifted above the railings. Mobile footage showed officers clashing with demonstrators near Old Palace Yard. The chants grew louder. Resign! 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 Crowd chanting. But the most explosive moment was still ahead. A second leak. This time a digital one. A folder of 11,000 deleted government emails, partially recovered by an anonymous tech worker inside the Department of Data Oversight. The files revealed internal debates about how to respond if the Commons requests clarity on the PM's statements and whether the government could legally deny specific briefings ever took place. One line stood out in bright red metadata. If questioned directly, fall back on foreign interference narrative. Blame external actors. So while Britain was outside demanding answers, the official plan, according to the leak, was to blame shadowy overseas bots instead of addressing whether the Prime Minister knowingly misled Parliament. And as soon as the leak circulated, the crowd outside Parliament doubled. Tube stations had to redirect passengers. Westminster Bridge was shut to vehicle traffic. Even Big Ben seemed to toll louder than usual. At 7:12 p.m., the Prime Minister appeared for a hastily arranged press statement. He denied lying. He denied the allegations. And he denied ever seeing the documents. But something had changed. His voice, usually steady, shook. His hands clutched the podium. Cameras zoomed in on the sweat collecting near his collar. The country watched a man trying to hold on to power with everything he had. Meanwhile, cabinet was cracking. 3 secretaries left Downing Street by the back door. Not a word to the press. Their cars sped off into the dark like they were escaping a disaster zone. Rumors spread instantly. Bad polls. Divided cabinet. Leadership challenge incoming. The hashtags erupted. Hashtag PM must go. Hashtag Commons Truth. Hashtag lying to Britain. Then, at 8:03 p.m., Parliament erupted into scenes that looked ripped from a political meltdown blockbuster. MPs shouting across the chamber. One was physically pulled back by colleagues before lunging toward the front bench. The speaker's lines of order were drowned out by outrage. Veterans watching from a gallery stood up and began singing, "God Save the King." The entire chamber paused in shock. Even the Prime Minister stared at them. Their voices filled the hall. Some MPs bowed their heads. Others fought back tears. Silence. But the reckoning wasn't over. A third leak hit social media. This time, a whistleblower video recorded in a dimly lit office. A staffer whispered to the camera, "They're wiping drives tonight. If people don't speak up now, this will all disappear." Behind her, the glow of a computer monitor reflected rows of file names being erased. That clip alone hit 2 million views in under 30 minutes. Suddenly, the story wasn't about one alleged lie. It was about an entire government scrambling to erase the trail before the country could follow it. Outside, the crowd swelled so far that St. James's Park overflowed. Students chanting, parents holding kids on shoulders, pensioners handing out water bottles. Someone climbed a lamp post waving a giant flag that read, "Britain deserves better." The smell of smoke hung in the air. Helicopters hovered overhead. A line of police formed near the Treasury building as protesters pushed forward. At 9:28 p.m., curfew measures were strongly considered, according to a Metropolitan Police statement. That phrasing alone sent shockwaves across the city. A curfew in London. The last time such a thing was even discussed publicly was decades ago. But the moment the government tried to impose order, the people pushed back harder. Not with violence. With volume. With unity. With sheer force of presence. This wasn't a fringe movement. This was Britain remembering its voice. Meanwhile, inside Downing Street, cabinet members confronted the Prime Minister behind closed doors. Reports say raised voices echoed down the hall. No one knows exactly what was said, but an aide leaving the building whispered to a journalist, "It's over." He just doesn't know it yet. The defining rupture came at 10:41 p.m. when an urgent Commons session was called. MPs flooded back to the chamber. Phones buzzing. Faces pale. The opposition demanded clarity. Government loyalists hesitated. Ministers exchanged nervous glances. The Prime Minister tried to defend himself, voice shaking again. But then one of his own senior MPs stood up and said, "If the Prime Minister cannot tell us the truth without hesitation, he cannot govern this country." The chamber exploded. The Speaker shouted for order. It never came. This was Britain's reckoning moment. Veterans in the gallery saluted. Younger MPs wiped tears. Ministers stared at the floor. The illusion of control snapped right there, in that chamber, under those lights. And outside, as the bells chimed 11, the crowd erupted when word spread that cabinet resignations were being drafted. People hugged strangers. Some cried. Some waved flags above their heads like they were lifting the country out of its own fog. Tonight wasn't just a scandal. It was a breaking point. A moment when the country decided it had been talked down to, misled, and brushed aside for too long. For once, power didn't sit with the politicians. It sat with the pensioner, holding the cardboard sign. The veteran in the wheelchair. The student with a borrowed megaphone. The everyday Briton who showed up because they'd simply had enough. And when history looks back on this night, it will say one thing. Britain remembered who they are. If you believe truth still matters, subscribe to UK Pancakes and never look away. Thank you for watching.